The green-skinned woman stood at the rail of the round pen, her dark eyes tracking every movement of the chestnut mare inside. And Ivan Brennan knew within 30 seconds that she could read a horse better than anyone he had hired in 3 years. He was in the center of the pen with a young gelding, a bay with a white blaze who had been passed through 4 owners before landing here at Brennan Ranch with a reputation for being unbreakable. Ivan stood with his hands loose at his sides, talking in a low, steady stream about nothing in particular, the weather turning from the tail end of winter's mud toward spring, the quality of the hay they had put up last autumn, the way the light changed on the eastern hills at this time of day. He did not look directly at the horse. He did not reach. He simply stood and let his voice fill the space between them like warm water. The gelding's ears flicked toward him, away, toward him again. A good sign. "You are wasting time," the foreman, Marcus Cole, muttered from his position near the gate. He was a thick-shouldered man in his 50s with opinions about everything and patience for nothing. "That horse needs a firmer hand." Ivan did not break his rhythm or turn his head. "This horse needs to learn that hands do not mean pain. That takes time, not force. Time costs money. So does a broken leg when he throws someone into a fence post." Marcus grunted but said nothing more. Ivan had been arguing this philosophy since he came back from the Eastern Territories 5 years ago, and the results spoke for themselves. Horses that left Brennan Ranch were steady, reliable, and worth double what the half-wild plains stock usually brought. The new hire had not said a word. Ivan glanced her way as he moved in a slow arc around the gelding, keeping his voice even. She was small for an orc, perhaps 5.5 feet, with a build that looked like she had missed too many meals for too long. Her skin was the green of new leaves, and her dark hair was pulled back in a braid that hung between her shoulder blades. She wore a man's work shirt that was too large and trousers that had been mended more than once. Her hands, resting on the top rail, were scarred across the knuckles. What caught his attention was the way she watched the horse, not with curiosity or impatience, but with a deep, focused understanding. She saw the tension in his hindquarters, the way he held his weight ready to bolt, the slow softening of his eye as Ivan's voice continued its steady cadence. "What do you see?" Ivan called to her. She startled slightly, as though she had not expected to be addressed. Her voice, when it came, was low and careful. "He was beaten on the left side. He does not trust anything coming from that direction, but he wants to trust. He is tired of being afraid." Ivan felt something settle in his chest, a recognition. "That is exactly right. She has been here 10 minutes, Marcus said. She could be guessing. She is not guessing." Ivan turned back to the gelding, who had taken 2 steps closer while they spoke. "What is your name?" The orc woman hesitated. Asha what?" Another pause, longer this time. "Varren. I am Ivan Brennan. That is Marcus Cole, the foreman. My brother Jasper owns the other half of this place, but he is not here much. You will work with the horses, feeding, grooming, tack repair, and exercising the ones who are far enough along. Pay is 40 cents a day plus board in the bunkhouse and meals. We start at dawn and finish when the work is done. Does that suit you?" "Yes." Her voice was almost too quiet to hear. "Good. Marcus will show you where to put your things. We will start you tomorrow." Marcus shot him a look that promised a conversation later, but Ivan ignored it. He returned his attention to the gelding, who was now close enough that Ivan could see the small scars on his neck, the marks of a whip. He kept talking, kept his hands down, and did not reach. It would take weeks, maybe months, before this horse would accept touch without fear. But Ivan had learned patience the hard way, and he had time. He always made time for the ones who had been hurt. Asha Varren learned the rhythm of Brennan Ranch quickly. She woke before dawn in the narrow bunk at the far end of the bunkhouse, away from the 3 other hired men who worked the place. They were civil enough, though one of them, a young man named Tom, watched her with the kind of wary suspicion she had grown used to over the past 2 years. She kept her head down, did her work, and spoke only when necessary. The ranch sat in the rolling plains country, where the grass stretched to the horizon and the wind never truly stopped. The main house was a sturdy log structure with a stone chimney, and the barn was larger than some of the buildings Asha had seen in the last town she passed through. There were 3 corrals, the round pen where Ivan worked his magic, and a bunkhouse that was drafty but dry. Ivan Brennan was unlike any man she had expected to work for. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with brown hair that fell over his forehead and gray eyes that seemed to see more than they should. He moved with an easy confidence that came not from arrogance but from deep certainty in what he was doing. He smiled often, spoke kindly to everyone including her, and had a way of making even the most nervous horse settle under the sound of his voice. He also had a problem, though Asha did not learn the details until her 3rd day. She was in the barn, checking the hoof of a mare who had been favoring her front left leg, when she heard raised voices from the direction of the house. She glanced toward the open barn door and saw 2 men standing in the yard. One was Ivan. The other was taller, broader, with the same brown hair but a harder set to his jaw. "You cannot keep pretending this is not a problem, Jasper." Ivan's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I will handle it." Jasper Brennan gestured sharply. "I just need another month." "You said that 3 months ago. Now there is a lien on the ranch, on our land, Jasper. Father left this place to both of us, and you are gambling it away piece by piece." "I said I will handle it." "How? With what money?" Jasper did not answer. He turned and walked to his horse, a flashy buckskin gelding tied near the porch, and swung into the saddle without another word. Ivan stood watching him go, his hands on his hips, and Asha saw the tension in his shoulders even from a distance. She returned her attention to the mare's hoof, found the stone wedged near the frog, and worked it free with careful fingers. The mare shifted but did not pull away. Asha ran her hand down the leg, feeling for heat, for swelling, for anything that suggested a deeper problem. There was nothing. She released the hoof and straightened, and when she turned, Ivan was standing in the barn doorway. "Did you find it?" he asked. She held up the stone, small and sharp-edged. "She will be fine in a day or 2. "Good." He stepped inside, his boots quiet on the packed dirt floor. "You have a gift for this." Asha shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I pay attention. Most people do not." He moved to the mare's side, ran his own hand down her leg, checking Asha's work. It was not distrust, she realized, but habit. He was a man who double-checked everything, who did not take shortcuts. "Where did you learn?" Here and there. It was not quite a lie. She had worked in stables, on farms, anywhere she could trade labor for food and a place to sleep. She had always been good with animals. They did not care what she was, and they did not ask questions. Ivan nodded slowly as though he heard what she did not say. "If you ever want to talk, I am a decent listener." "I am fine." "All right." He did not push. "There is a bridle that needs mending in the tack room. Second shelf on the left. Can you handle that?" "Yes." He smiled, and it was warm and genuine, and Asha felt something twist in her chest that she could not name. She had been wary of kindness for so long that she no longer knew what to do with it when it was offered. She went to the tack room, found the bridle, and settled onto a stool to work. Her hands were steady as she threaded the new leather through the buckle, as she checked each stitch. The work was familiar, soothing. It was only when Ivan walked past her to reach for another bridle on the shelf behind her that she flinched so hard she nearly fell off the stool. He froze. His hand was still in the air, nowhere near her, but she had seen the movement in her peripheral vision and her body had reacted before her mind could catch up. She was breathing too fast, her heart hammering, and she hated herself for it. "I am sorry," Ivan said quietly. He lowered his hand. "I should have warned you I was reaching past you." She could not look at him. Her fingers were trembling and she clenched them around the bridle to make them stop. "It is fine. It is not fine." He stepped back, putting more distance between them. "Asha, I need you to hear this. I will wait as long as you need. I will not sneak up on you. I will not reach past you without saying something first, and I will not touch you unless you say it is all right. I promise you that." She did not know what to say. Men did not make promises like that. Men took what they wanted, and if you were an orc, they took even more. "You understand?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good." He picked up the bridle he had been reaching for, moving slowly and deliberately so she could track every motion. "Take your time with that mending. There is no rush." He left, and Asha sat alone in the tack room with her hands shaking and her throat tight. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that someone, somewhere, could be trusted, but trust was a luxury she could not afford. The weeks passed, and the land began to shift from the cold mud of late winter into the tentative green of early spring. The horses in Ivan's care progressed steadily. The bay gelding, whose name was Flint, had allowed Ivan to touch his shoulder, then his neck, then finally to run a hand down his side without bolting. It was slow work, patient work, and Asha found herself drawn to the round pen whenever she had a spare moment. She watched Ivan work with a focus she usually reserved for the horses themselves. He never rushed. He never lost his temper. When a horse shied or kicked, he simply stepped back and started again, his voice a constant thread of calm. She began to understand that his method was not just about training horses. It was about healing them, about teaching them that the world did not have to be a place of fear. She wondered if he knew he was teaching her the same lesson. They spoke more as the days went on. Small conversations at first, about the work, about the horses, about the weather. Ivan had a way of asking questions that did not feel intrusive, and Asha found herself answering more than she intended. She told him she had worked on a farm in the southern plains, though she did not mention the circumstances. She told him she had left because the work dried up, which was not entirely true. She did not tell him about the labor broker, about the indenture contract she had signed when she was 16 and desperate, about the quarry where she had spent 2 years breaking stone until her hands bled. She especially did not tell him about the scars on her wrists, hidden beneath the long sleeves she wore even as the days grew warmer. Ivan, for his part, was an open book. He spoke freely about his life, about growing up on the ranch with Jasper, about their father who had died 4 years ago and their mother who had passed when they were boys. He talked about the years he spent in the Eastern Territories, learning the gentling techniques that had made him so good at what he did. He talked about his brother's gambling problem with a tired frustration that suggested this was a very old argument. "He is not a bad man," Ivan said one afternoon as they walked back from the far pasture where they had been checking on a group of young mares. "He is just lost. He has been lost since father died and he does not know how to find his way back." "Gambling will not help," Asha said. "I know. But telling him that only makes him defensive." Ivan sighed, pushing a hand through his hair. "The lien on the ranch is real. If we cannot pay it off by the end of summer, the bank can take half the property. I have been working extra horses, trying to bring in more money, but it is not enough." "How much do you need?" $300. He said it like it was an impossible sum, and for most people it was. Asha said nothing. She had $17 saved from her wages, hidden in the bottom of her pack. It was nowhere near enough to make a difference, and even if it were, she could not offer it without questions she did not want to answer. They walked in silence for a while, the grass brushing against their legs, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers and earth. Asha found herself more at ease in his presence than she had been with anyone in years. He had kept his promise. He warned her before he moved into her space, he asked before handing her anything, and he never, ever reached for her without giving her time to see it coming. She had stopped flinching quite so much. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. "Can I ask you something?" Ivan said. "You can ask." She did not promise to answer. "Why do you always wear long sleeves?" Her stomach dropped. She should have known he would notice eventually. Ivan noticed everything. "I get cold easily," she said. He glanced at her, and she saw the doubt in his eyes, but he did not press. "All right." They reached the barn, and Asha busied herself with hanging up the halters they had carried. Her heart was beating too fast, and her hands were unsteady. She hated lying to him, but the truth was worse. The truth would lead to questions, and questions would lead to her real name, and her real name would lead to the labor broker who still held her indenture contract. She had run 2 years ago in the middle of the night, when the foreman at the quarry had tried to do more than beat her. She had stolen a horse and ridden until the animal could go no farther, then walked until her feet bled, and she had not stopped looking over her shoulder since. "Asha," Ivan said quietly. She turned. He was standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his expression gentle. "Whatever you are running from," he said, "you are safe here. I mean that. You are safe." She wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and left her alone in the barn, and Asha stood there in the golden afternoon light, her throat tight and her eyes burning, and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to stop running. Spring settled fully over the plains, bringing warmer days and longer evenings. The horses thrived under Ivan's care, and the ranch hummed with steady work. Asha had been at Brennan Ranch for 2 months, and she felt something in her chest loosening. A tension she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. She and Ivan had fallen into an easy partnership. She could anticipate what he needed before he asked, and he trusted her judgment when it came to the horses. They worked side by side in a comfortable rhythm, and Asha caught herself smiling more often than she had in years. It was dangerous, she knew. Letting herself feel safe was dangerous. But she could not seem to stop. One evening in late April, after the work was done and the others had gone to the bunkhouse, Asha stayed behind in the barn to finish oiling a saddle. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air was soft and warm. She was humming under her breath, something her mother had sung when Asha was small, when she heard footsteps. She looked up to see Ivan in the doorway, a bucket in one hand and a smile on his face. "I thought you might want some help," he said. "I am almost finished." "Then I will keep you company." He set the bucket down and leaned against the post, his arms crossed. "You hum when you are content. Did you know that?" She felt her cheeks warm. "I did not realize I was humming. It is nice. You should do it more often." They fell into silence, the kind that was comfortable rather than awkward. Asha worked the oil into the leather, her hands moving in steady circles, and Ivan watched with the same quiet attention he gave everything. "Asha," he said after a while, and something in his tone made her look up. "I want to tell you something, but I do not want to make you uncomfortable." Her pulse quickened. "What is it?" "I think you are remarkable." He said it simply, as though it were a fact rather than an opinion. "You are smart and kind, and you have a gift with these animals that I have never seen in anyone else. I am grateful you came here." She did not know how to respond. Words like that were so foreign to her that they felt like another language. "I just wanted you to know," Ivan continued. You do not have to say anything, I just thought you should hear it. Thank you, she managed. He smiled, pushed off the post and picked up his bucket. I will let you finish. Good night, Asha. Good night. He left, and Asha sat alone in the gathering dark, her hands still on the saddle, and felt something shift inside her. It was not trust, not yet, but it was the beginning of it. The first fragile thread of belief that maybe, just maybe, she could let herself care about someone again. She did not hear the rider approaching the ranch until it was too late. The man arrived on a hot morning in early May, riding a gray mare and wearing a coat too heavy for the weather. Asha was in the corral with one of the young mares, brushing out her mane, when she heard the jingle of harness and the low rumble of voices from the yard. She glanced up and felt her blood turn to ice. She knew that coat. She knew that horse. She knew the man. His name was Gerald Finch, and he was a labor broker who specialized in indenture contracts. He bought them from desperate people, worked them until they broke, and sold the contracts to other brokers when he was done. Asha had signed her contract with him when she was 16, promised 5 years of labor in exchange for passage north and a place to live. She had not understood what she was agreeing to until it was too late. She dropped the brush and stepped behind the mare, her heart hammering. If he saw her, if he recognized her, everything would fall apart. Can I help you? Ivan's voice, calm and polite. I am looking for a woman. Finch's voice was rough, like gravel under boots. Green-skinned orc, about 5.5 feet, thin build. She has been using a false name, but her real name is Asha Varren. She is my property under indenture contract, and I have legal claim to her labor. Asha's breath stopped. Her real name. He knew her real name, and he had just spoken it aloud. I do not know anyone by that name, Ivan said. His tone had not changed, but Asha could hear the edge underneath it. Maybe you know her by another name. She has been on the run for 2 years. Theft of property, breach of contract. The law is on my side. If I see anyone matching that description, I will let the authorities know. See that you do. Finch paused, and Asha heard the creak of leather as he shifted in the saddle. There is a bounty for her return. $50, no questions asked. $50. It was more than a month's wages. Asha closed her eyes and waited for Ivan to call her out, to point her toward Finch and collect the bounty that could help him save his ranch. I will keep that in mind, Ivan said. There was a long silence, and then the sound of hooves moving away. Asha stayed frozen behind the mare, her hands clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. She could not move. She could not breathe. Asha. Ivan's voice, quiet and urgent. Come here. She stepped around the mare on shaking legs and saw Ivan standing alone in the yard. Finch was riding away down the long road, a dark shape against the bright morning. Is it true? Ivan asked. Is your real name Asha Varren? She nodded, unable to speak. Did you sign an indenture contract with him? Another nod. Ivan ran a hand over his face, his expression tight. All right. All right. Come inside. We need to talk. She followed him into the house, her legs barely supporting her weight. The main room was simple but comfortable, with a stone fireplace and a table large enough for 6. Ivan gestured for her to sit, and she sank into a chair, her hands trembling in her lap. Tell me everything, Ivan said. From the beginning. So she did. She told him about being 16 and alone, her parents dead from fever, her village burned by raiders. She told him about Finch offering her a contract, promising safety and work, and how she had been too desperate to read the fine print. She told him about the quarry, about the long days breaking stone under the sun, about the foreman who beat anyone who slowed down, and the night he came to her bunk with something worse than a beating in mind. She told him about running, about the horse she stole, about the 2 years of looking over her shoulder and never staying anywhere long enough to be found. I am sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I should have told you. I should have been honest. But I thought if I stayed quiet, if I just kept my head down, maybe he would never find me. Hey. Ivan reached across the table, then stopped, his hand hovering in the air. May I? She looked at his hand, at the steady strength of it, and nodded. He took her hand gently, his fingers warm against hers. You have nothing to apologize for, nothing. What he did was wrong, and what that foreman tried to do was worse. You had every right to run. The law does not see it that way. The contract is legal. Then the law is wrong. His voice was fierce, and she looked up to see anger burning in his gray eyes. Not at her, she realized, but for her. I will not let him take you. I promise you that. You cannot stop him. If he comes back with the authorities, then we will figure it out. He squeezed her hand. You are not alone in this, Asha, not anymore. She wanted to believe him, but fear had wrapped around her throat like a fist. He will come back, I know. And when he does, we will deal with it. Ivan leaned forward, his gaze steady on hers. I meant what I said before. You are safe here. I will make sure of it. She pulled her hand back, not because she did not trust him, but because the weight of what he was offering was too much. You do not understand what you are risking. If you help me, you could be charged with harboring a fugitive. You could lose the ranch. I do not care. You should care. This is your home, your livelihood, and you are my friend. He said it simply, as though it were obvious. I will not throw you to a man like that to save my own skin. We will find another way. Asha felt tears burning in her eyes, and she blinked them back. She had not cried in 2 years, and she was not about to start now. What do we do? First, we go to town and talk to a lawyer. There has to be a way to break that contract, or at least challenge it. Second, we figure out what Finch is hiding. Men like that do not stay in business unless they are cutting corners somewhere. He is careful. He always has the law on his side. Maybe. But I am betting he has bent the rules more than once, and if we can prove it, we can turn this around. Ivan stood, his jaw set. Pack your things. We leave in an hour. Ivan, I am not giving you a choice on this, Asha. We are going to fix it. She looked up at him, at the determination in his face, and felt something crack open in her chest. She had been alone for so long, fighting so hard to survive, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone fight alongside her. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled, and it was warm and true. You do not have to thank me. This is what friends do. The town was a half-day's ride south, a dusty collection of buildings clustered around a main street. Ivan and Asha arrived in the early afternoon and went straight to the office of a lawyer named Peter Hargrove, a thin man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a cautious demeanor. Ivan explained the situation, and Hargrove listened without interrupting. When Ivan finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Indenture contracts are legal, he said slowly, but they are not ironclad. If you can prove coercion, fraud, or abusive conditions, you can petition to have the contract voided. What counts as abusive conditions? Asha asked. Physical abuse, denial of agreed-upon wages, unsafe working conditions. If the labor broker violated the terms of the contract, you have grounds to challenge it. Hargrove looked at her. Do you have any evidence, witnesses, documentation? Asha hesitated. There were others at the quarry, 12 of us, all working under indenture. They saw what happened. Are they still there? I do not know. Hargrove frowned. Without witnesses, it becomes your word against his. That is a difficult case to win. What if we can find the others? Ivan said. What if we can get them to testify? Then you have a chance. Hargrove paused. But understand, if you go down this road, it will not be quiet. You will have to file a public petition, which means using your real name and your real identity. If you have been hiding under a false name, that protection will be gone. Asha felt her stomach twist. And if I do not? Then Finch can pursue you through the courts, and eventually he will win. The law is on his side unless you challenge it. She looked at Ivan, who was watching her with steady, patient eyes. "It is your choice," he said quietly. "Whatever you decide, I will support you." Asha thought of the others at the quarry, the people she had left behind. She thought of the foreman, of the beatings, of the nights she had lain awake listening to the sounds of crying from the other bunks. She thought of the woman who had died from heatstroke because the foreman would not let her rest, and the man who had lost 2 fingers in an accident because there were no safety measures in place. She thought of Finch, sitting in his office, buying and selling people like they were livestock. "I will do it," she said. "I will testify." Hargrove nodded. "Then we start by filing a petition. I will need your full name, the details of the contract, and a written account of what happened at the quarry. I will also need to know where the quarry is located, so we can try to find the other workers." Asha gave him the information, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. When they left the office an hour later, the sun was sinking toward the horizon, and Asha felt both lighter and heavier than she had in years. "You did the right thing," Ivan said as they walked their horses toward the edge of town. "I hope so. I know so." He swung into the saddle and looked down at her. "This is not just about you, Asha. If we can take Finch down, we can free the others too. That is worth fighting for." She mounted her own horse, a steady mare named Clover, and nodded. "I know, I am just afraid. Fear means you are human. Or orc in your case." He smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "It does not mean you are weak." They rode back to the ranch in the fading light, and Asha let herself lean into the hope Ivan was offering. It was fragile, barely more than a thread, but it was there. And for now, that was enough. The weeks that followed were tense. Hargrove sent inquiries to the quarry, trying to locate the other workers, while Asha wrote out her statement in painstaking detail. Ivan kept the ranch running, but Asha could see the worry in his eyes every time a rider approached. Finch did not return, but his presence lingered like a shadow. Asha caught herself looking over her shoulder, jumping at unexpected sounds, and Ivan responded by being even more deliberate in his movements around her. He announced himself when he entered a room. He asked before stepping into her space. He waited, as he had promised, for as long as she needed. It was Jasper who brought the next complication. He arrived at the ranch in mid-May, looking haggard and defensive, and Ivan met him in the yard with his arms crossed. "The bank sent another letter," Jasper said without preamble. "We have until the end of July. If we do not pay the lien by then, they take the land. I know. I am trying, Ivan. I am working on it." "You are gambling on it, you mean?" Ivan's voice was hard. "How much did you lose this time?" Jasper flushed. "That is not your concern. It is absolutely my concern when your losses are putting our home at risk." Ivan stepped closer, his jaw tight. "I have been busting my back trying to make up for your debts, and you are still throwing money away. When does it stop, Jasper?" "I said I will handle it." "You cannot handle it. You have proven that." Ivan took a breath, visibly forcing himself to calm down. "I am going to pay off the lien myself. I will sell the horses I have been training, take on extra work, whatever it takes. But you need to stay away from the gambling halls. Do you hear me?" Jasper's expression twisted. "You think you are better than me, do not you? You and your perfect methods, your perfect life. I think I am trying to save what Father left us, and you are tearing it apart." Ivan's voice was quiet now, but no less fierce. "If you cannot stop, then you need to leave. I will buy out your half of the ranch, and you can go wherever you want. But I will not let you destroy this place." There was a long silence. Jasper looked at his brother, and something in his face crumpled. "I do not know how to stop." "Then let me help you." Ivan's voice softened. "But you have to meet me halfway. You have to try. Jasper nodded slowly, and Asha, watching from the barn, saw the weight of years of struggle between them. Whatever happened next, she hoped they could find their way through it. In late May, Hargrove sent word that he had located 3 of the workers from the quarry. They were willing to testify, but they were afraid. Finch had threatened them, promised retribution if they spoke out, and they needed assurance that they would be protected. Ivan and Asha rode to meet them in a small town 2 days' travel west. The 3 former workers were orcs, 2 men and a woman, and they looked as worn and weary as Asha had felt 2 years ago. Their names were Corin, Daria, and Mako, and they greeted Asha with a mixture of relief and fear. "You really ran," Corin said. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 30s with a scar running down his cheek. "We thought you were dead." "I almost was." Asha looked at each of them in turn. "Hargrove says we can challenge the contracts if we testify together, but it means going public. It means Finch will know who we are." "He already knows," Daria said quietly. She was older, her hair streaked with gray. "He knows we are here. He knows we talked to the lawyer. He sent someone to threaten us last week." "What did they say?" Ivan asked. "That if we testify, he will make sure we never work again. That he will have us arrested for breach of contract and thrown in jail." Daria's hands were shaking. "I have a son. I cannot go to jail." "You will not." Ivan's voice was firm. "Hargrove has connections with the territorial judge. If we can prove Finch violated the contracts, he is the one who will face charges, not you." "That is a big if," Mako said. He was younger, maybe in his early 20s, with a quiet intensity that reminded Asha of herself. "Men like Finch do not go down easy." "I know." Asha met his eyes. "But if we do nothing, he wins. He keeps buying people, keeps working them to death, and nothing changes. I do not want that. Do you?" Mako hesitated, then shook his head. "No." "Then we fight." Asha looked at each of them. "Together." Corin and Daria exchanged a glance, and finally Corin nodded. "All right, we will testify." Hargrove filed the petition in early June, and the hearing was set for mid-July. In the meantime, Asha returned to Brennan Ranch and tried to focus on the work. The horses needed her, the ranch needed her, and Ivan needed her. She found herself spending more time with him, not just working but talking. They sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the plains, and spoke about everything and nothing. Ivan told her about his dreams for the ranch, about expanding the breeding program and building a reputation that would bring in buyers from across the territory. Asha told him about her childhood, about the village she had grown up in, and the stories her mother used to tell. She did not flinch anymore when he moved near her. She had learned the rhythm of his presence, the way he announced himself, the careful space he always left. And slowly, carefully, she found herself reaching back. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Ivan turned to her and said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why did you stay here? You could have kept running. You could have gone anywhere." Asha thought about it for a long moment. "Because you made me feel like I was worth staying for." His expression softened, and he looked out at the darkness. "You are worth a great deal more than you know. I am starting to believe that." They sat in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that spoke of understanding and trust. Asha found herself leaning slightly toward him, not touching but close enough to feel the warmth of his presence. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The hearing took place in the territorial courthouse, a 2-story building in the larger town of Ridgemont. Asha, Ivan, Corin, Daria, and Mako arrived the day before, and Hargrove met them at the hotel to go over their testimonies one last time. "The judge is fair," Hargrove said, "but he will want evidence, not just stories. We need to be clear, specific, and consistent." If Finch's lawyer can poke holes in your accounts, we lose. We know what happened, Corin said. We were there. Then tell it exactly as you remember it. No embellishment, no exaggeration, just the truth. The hearing began at 9 the next morning. The courtroom was full of people, some curious, some hostile, and Asha felt every eye on her as she took her seat at the front. Finch was there, sitting with his lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Finch's expression was smug, confident, and Asha felt a flare of anger in her chest. The judge, a gray-haired man named Walter Kane, called the hearing to order. Hargrove presented the petition, outlining the allegations of abuse, fraud, and contract violations. Finch's lawyer argued that the contracts were legal and binding, and that the workers had breached them by leaving without permission. Then the testimonies began. Asha went first. She spoke clearly, recounting the terms of her contract, the conditions at the quarry, and the night she had fled. She described the beatings, the lack of safety equipment, the woman who had died from heat stroke. She did not cry, did not falter, but her voice shook when she described the foreman coming to her bunk. Finch's lawyer tried to discredit her, asking why she had not gone to the authorities sooner, why she had used a false name, why she expected anyone to believe her. Hargrove objected repeatedly, and Judge Kane sustained most of the objections, but the damage was done. Asha could see the doubt on some of the faces in the courtroom. Corin, Daria, and Mako testified next, each telling similar stories of abuse and exploitation. Finch's lawyer hammered them with questions, but their accounts were consistent, detailed, and impossible to ignore. The turning point came when Hargrove called a surprise witness, a man named Samuel Trent, a former foreman at another of Finch's operations. Trent testified that Finch routinely violated safety regulations, underpaid his workers, and falsified records to avoid scrutiny. He had documentation to back it up, including ledgers that showed Finch had been skimming wages and pocketing the difference. Finch's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Kane allowed the evidence. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Asha saw Finch's face go pale. The hearing lasted 3 days. On the final day, Judge Kane delivered his ruling. I find that the indenture contracts in question were obtained through fraudulent means and enforced under abusive conditions, he said. The contracts are hereby voided, and the workers are free of all obligations. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into the business practices of Gerald Finch. If the allegations of fraud and wage theft are substantiated, he will face criminal charges. Asha felt her knees go weak. She reached for the table to steady herself, and Ivan was there, his hand on her shoulder, solid and warm. "You did it," he said quietly. "You won." She looked up at him, and for the first time in years she felt the weight lift from her chest. "We won." The ride back to Brennan Ranch was filled with a lightness Asha had not felt in years. Corin, Daria, and Mako had gone their separate ways, free to start new lives, and Asha had promised to stay in touch. She and Ivan rode side by side, the summer sun warm on their faces, and talked about everything except the hearing. "What will you do now?" Ivan asked as they neared the ranch. "I do not know." Asha glanced at him. "I suppose I need to figure out who I am without someone chasing me." "You are Asha Varren," Ivan said. "You are strong and brave, and you have a gift with horses that I will never stop being amazed by. That is who you are." She smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "And what about you? What will you do about the ranch?" "I sold 3 of the horses last week. That brought in enough to pay off half the lien. Jasper actually came through with the rest. He sold his buckskin and some of his gear, and he promised to stay away from the gambling halls. I think he means it this time." "That is good." "It is." Ivan paused, then said, Asha, I need to tell you something." She looked at him, her heart suddenly beating faster. "What is it?" "I care about you, more than I probably should given everything that has happened. I know you have been through hell, and I know you need time, but I wanted you to know. I am not going anywhere, and I will wait as long as you need." She pulled her horse to a stop, and he did the same. They sat there in the middle of the road, the wind stirring the grass around them, and Asha felt something shift inside her. She had spent so long being afraid, so long running, that she had forgotten what it felt like to reach for something she wanted. "I care about you too," she said. "I have for a while now. I was just afraid to say it." Ivan's face lit up and he dismed, his hands were full. Not that he was giving her something, but that she was taking something. And for the first time in a long time, Asha reached for him first. She slid down from her horse and walked to where he stood. He watched her, his gray eyes full of hope and patience, and waited. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the way his breath caught, and lifted her hand to his chest. "I am ready," she said quietly. He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "May I?" "Yes." He cupped her face with his hands, gentle and careful, and kissed her. It was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Asha felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness but from relief, from joy, from the overwhelming sense that she was finally safe. When they pulled apart, Ivan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I think I have loved you since the day you told me what Flint needed." "I love you too." The words felt strange on her tongue, but they were true. "I did not think I could ever feel this way again. You can feel anything you want. You are free now." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, and Asha let herself believe it. She was free. She was safe. She was loved. And for the first time in years, the future did not feel like something to be afraid of. The summer passed in a haze of warmth and work. Asha and Ivan fell into a new rhythm, one that included stolen kisses in the barn and long conversations under the stars. The ranch thrived, the horses flourished, and Jasper stayed true to his word, throwing himself into the work with a determination that surprised everyone. In late July, just after the hearing, Ivan called a meeting with his brother in the main house. Asha was invited, and she sat at the table while Ivan laid out a plan. "I want to make Asha a partner in the ranch," Ivan said. "She has earned it, and I trust her completely." Jasper looked at Asha, his expression thoughtful. "I do not have a problem with that. She is a hell of a worker, and she has kept this place running as much as anyone." "Thank you," Asha said quietly. "There is one condition," Ivan added. "I want to make sure the ranch is protected. I am proposing that we put it in a trust so no one person can sell or gamble it away. We all have equal say, but no one can act alone." Jasper flinched but nodded. "That is fair. I have earned that restriction." They shook hands, and Asha felt a sense of belonging settle over her. This was her home now. These people were her family. In August, as the summer heat began to ease, Ivan asked her to marry him. They were in the round pen with Flint, who had progressed to the point where he could be ridden without fear. Ivan was brushing him down, and Asha was repairing a section of the fence when he said, "Asha, will you marry me?" She looked up, startled, and saw him standing there with his hands in his pockets and a nervous smile on his face. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will." He laughed, bright and joyous, and pulled her into his arms. Flint snorted and tossed his head as though approving, and Asha laughed too, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. The wedding took place in late August, during the summer branding. It was a simple ceremony, held in the yard with Jasper as the witness and Marcus, the foreman, officiating. Corin, Daria, and Mako traveled back to the ranch to attend, and Hargrove sent a gift with a note congratulating them. Asha wore a simple dress, and Ivan wore his best shirt, and they stood together under the wide blue sky and made their promises. When Ivan kissed her, the small group of friends and workers cheered, and Asha felt tears slip down her cheeks. They were happy tears. That evening, as the sun set over the plains and the branding fire burned low, Asha and Ivan sat together on the porch, their hands entwined. Jasper was inside, talking with Corin, and the sound of laughter drifted through the open window. "This is everything I never thought I could have," Asha said quietly. "You deserve all of it and more." Ivan kissed her temple. "You are the strongest person I have ever known." "I do not feel strong." "That is because strength is not about never being afraid. It is about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. You did that. You stood up to Finch, you fought for yourself and the others, and you won. That is strength." She leaned into him, letting his warmth surround her. "I could not have done it without you. We did it together. That is what partners do." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars come out one by one. The night was cool and quiet, and the land stretched out around them, endless and full of promise. "What do you think comes next?" Asha asked. "I do not know," Ivan smiled, "but I know we will face it together." "Together," she echoed, and it was a promise she intended to keep. The months that followed were full of quiet joy. Autumn came, painting the plains in gold and amber, and the ranch settled into the rhythm of the cooler season. The horses were sold to buyers who appreciated Ivan's methods, bringing in enough money to secure the ranch's future. Jasper stayed sober and focused, proving himself day by day, and Asha found herself trusting him more as time went on. In October, word came that Gerald Finch had been convicted of fraud and wage theft. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and his business was shut down. The dozen workers who had been under contract were freed, and Hargrove helped them find new placements or start fresh. Asha felt a weight lift when she heard the news. It was not just her freedom anymore. It was the freedom of everyone he had hurt. Winter arrived, bringing snow and cold winds, and Asha and Ivan spent their evenings by the fire, talking about their plans for the spring. They wanted to expand the breeding program, bring in new stock, and build a second barn to house the growing number of horses. "We will need more help," Ivan said one evening as they sat together on the couch, a blanket draped over their legs. "Maybe we can reach out to some of the people Finch had under contract, give them a fresh start." "That is a good idea." Asha rested her head on his shoulder. "They deserve a chance to rebuild their lives." "So do you," she smiled. "I already have. I have you, I have this place, and I have a future I never thought I would see. That is more than I ever hoped for." Ivan kissed her hair. "I love you. I love you too." The winter passed slowly, but it was a good slowness, the kind that came from being content. Asha and Ivan worked together, planned together, and dreamed together. Jasper proved himself time and again, and Asha began to see him not as a burden but as a brother. Spring returned, bringing new life to the plains. The grass turned green, the wildflowers bloomed, and the ranch hummed with activity. Asha found herself humming again, the way she had that first summer, and Ivan teased her about it gently. "You only hum when you are truly happy," he said one morning as they worked side by side in the barn. "Then I must be truly happy," she replied. He grinned and stole a kiss, quick and playful, and Asha laughed. In April, Asha discovered she was pregnant. She told Ivan one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set, and he stared at her for a long moment before his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am sure." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, and Asha felt tears prick her eyes. She had not thought she would ever have this, a family of her own, a child who would grow up safe and loved. "We are going to be parents," Ivan said, his voice full of wonder. "We are." I am terrified." "So am I." She pulled back to look at him. "But we will figure it out, together." "Together," he agreed. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Asha found herself glowing with a happiness she had never known. Ivan was attentive and careful, making sure she did not overwork herself, and Jasper surprised her by being equally protective. He built a cradle in his spare time, carving intricate designs into the wood, and presented it to them with a shy smile. "For the baby," he said. "I wanted to do something." Asha hugged him, and Jasper looked startled but pleased. "Thank you, Jasper. It is beautiful." In November, as the first snow began to fall, Asha gave birth to a daughter. The labor was long and difficult, but Ivan stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, red-faced and wailing, Asha held her and wept with joy. "She is perfect," Ivan said, his voice thick with emotion. "What should we name her?" Asha asked. They had talked about names for months but had never settled on one. Now, looking at their daughter's tiny face, Asha knew exactly what she wanted to call her. "Rhea," she said. "Her name is Rhea." Ivan smiled. "Rhea Brennan, I love it." Rhea grew quickly, a bright and curious child with her mother's green skin and her father's gray eyes. She was a handful, always getting into things, but she brought a light to the ranch that Asha had not known was missing. As the years passed, the ranch continued to thrive. Ivan's reputation as a horse gentler spread, and buyers came from across the territory to purchase his stock. Asha managed the day-to-day operations, her sharp eye and steady hand making her indispensable. Jasper stayed sober and became a valued partner, his mistakes long forgiven if not forgotten. Corin, Daria, and Mako visited often, and Asha was grateful for their friendship. They had all survived the worst and come out stronger, and that bond was something she treasured. One evening in late spring, when Rhea was 3 years old, Asha and Ivan sat on the porch watching their daughter chase fireflies in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the air was warm and soft. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Ivan asked. "Sometimes." Asha leaned against him. "But I try not to dwell on it. What matters is where we are now." "And where are we?" She smiled. "Home." He kissed her, slow and sweet, and Rhea's laughter rang out across the yard. It was a sound full of joy and innocence, and Asha knew she would do anything to protect it. She had spent so many years running, so many years afraid, but she was not running anymore. She was standing still, rooted in the life she had built with Ivan, and she was not going anywhere. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Ivan wrapped his arm around her. "Always." They sat together as the stars came out, and Asha felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. She was free. She was loved. She was home. And that was enough. Years continued to unfold like the seasons, each one bringing its own gifts and challenges. Rhea grew into a bright, spirited girl who loved the horses as much as her parents did. By the time she was 5, she could ride as well as some of the hired hands, and Ivan joked that she had inherited Asha's gift for understanding animals. In the spring when Rhea was 6, Asha gave birth to a son. They named him Brant, and he was a calm, thoughtful baby who seemed content to watch the world go by. Rhea adored him, taking her role as big sister very seriously, and Asha often found her sitting by his cradle, telling him stories about the horses. The ranch continued to expand. They built the second barn, brought in new stock, and hired more workers, including 2 of the people who had been freed from Finch's contracts. The community they built was one of trust and respect, and Asha was proud of what they had accomplished. Jasper eventually met a woman named Clara, a widow with a young son, and they married in a quiet ceremony at the ranch. Clara was kind and practical, and she brought a stability to Jasper's life that he had been missing. Asha was glad to see him happy, and she welcomed Clara and her son into the family without hesitation. One autumn evening when Rhea was 8 and Brant was 2, Asha and Ivan stood in the pasture watching the horses graze. The sun was setting, and the air was crisp with the promise of winter. "Do you ever miss the way things were before?" Asha asked. "When it was just the two of us?" Ivan considered the question. "Sometimes, but I would not trade what we have now for anything. Our children, our family, this life we have built, it is more than I ever dreamed of." Asha nodded. "I feel the same way. I just wanted to make sure you were happy." "I am." He took her hand, his fingers warm against hers. "I am exactly where I want to be." They stood together in the fading light, and Asha felt a contentment that went bone deep. She had come so far from the frightened, broken woman who had arrived at Brennan Ranch all those years ago. She had found her strength, her voice, and her place in the world. She had found love. As they walked back to the house, Rhea ran out to meet them, her hair flying behind her. "Mama, Papa, come quick." Brant took his first steps. They hurried inside to find Brant standing in the middle of the room, wobbling but determined. He took 2 steps toward Asha before falling onto his bottom, and everyone cheered. Asha scooped him up, laughing, and kissed his chubby cheeks. "You are growing up so fast," she murmured. Ivan wrapped his arms around both of them, and Rhea joined the hug, and for a moment they stood there together, a family united by love and resilience. That night, after the children were asleep, Asha and Ivan sat by the fire, their hands entwined. The house was quiet, the only sound the crackle of the flames and the soft whisper of the wind outside. "I have been thinking," Ivan said, "about the future." "What about it?" "I want to make sure the ranch stays in the family. I want Rhea and Brant to grow up knowing this is theirs, that they have a place to come home to no matter what." "That is a good thought." Asha leaned her head on his shoulder. "I want that too. Then we will make it happen." He kissed her temple. "We will build something that lasts, something they can be proud of." "They will be proud of you," Asha said. "You have given them everything." "We have given them everything," Ivan corrected. "You and me together," she smiled. "Together." The years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to the life they had built. Rhea grew into a confident young woman with her mother's strength and her father's kindness. Brant was quieter, more introspective, but he had a gift for working with the younger horses, and Ivan took great pride in teaching him. The ranch became known throughout the territory as a place of integrity and quality. People came from far and wide to buy horses, and Ivan's methods became the standard for gentling. Asha managed the business side, her sharp mind and careful attention ensuring they stayed profitable even in lean years. Jasper and Clara had 2 more children, and the ranch was filled with the laughter and chaos of a growing family. Asha loved it all, the noise, the mess, the sense of life bursting at the seams. One spring evening, when Rhea was 16 and Brant was 12, Asha stood in the round pen watching Ivan work with a young mare. He was older now, gray threading through his hair, but he moved with the same confidence and grace he always had. The mare was nervous, her ears flicking back and forth, but Ivan's voice was steady, soothing, and Asha could see the moment the mare began to trust him. It was the same thing he had done for her all those years ago, and Asha felt a surge of love so strong it took her breath away. When he finished and came to stand beside her, she took his hand. "You are still the best at what you do." "I had a good teacher," he smiled. I think it was the other way around. Then we taught each other." He pulled her close, and they stood together in the fading light, watching the mare graze peacefully. "You have any regrets?" Ivan asked. Asha thought about it, about the hard years and the fear and the pain, but also about the love and the joy and the life they had built. "No," she said. "Not a single one." "Good." He kissed her, slow and tender. "Neither do I." They walked back to the house together, hand in hand, and Asha felt the certainty of their love settle around her like a warm cloak. She had been afraid once, broken and lost, but Ivan had waited for her. He had given her time and space and patience, and in return, she had given him her heart. It was a fair trade. As they reached the porch, Rhea called out to them, asking for help with one of the horses. Brant was right behind her, carrying a bucket of oats, and Jasper waved from the barn. The ranch was alive with activity, with family, with love. And Asha knew this was exactly where she was meant to be. She had spent so long searching for a place to belong. And she had found it here, in the wide plains, in the warmth of Ivan's love, in the laughter of their children. She had found home. And as the sun set over Brennan Ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Asha stood on the porch with Ivan's arm around her and felt a peace that went deeper than words. She was free. She was loved. She was home. And that, she thought, was the greatest gift of all.